Hey everyone, today we are talking about two of the richest Americans to ever live, that being John Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. These two people had more wealth than anyone today could possibly imagine. They had money that would make Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk blush. Both Carnegie and Rockefeller had around as much wealth as 3% of the entire United States output. In other words, 3% of GDP. That is astounding. It is impossible, really, to imagine. So, how did these two guys have, both of them, between them, what would be equal to about 350 to 400 billion dollars in 2023 dollars? Well, it comes from building monopolies in their respective industries, which today would be illegal thanks to the Sherman Antitrust Act. But in that day, initially at least, they were building companies that were totally legal. In the case of Rockefeller, that company, Standard Oil, was eventually broken up. In the case of Carnegie, his company, U.S. Steel, is still around. So let's talk about Rockefeller and Carnegie and how they use both vertical integration and horizontal integration to build their monopolies. This is not the be all end all of Rockefeller and Carnegie videos. You could do entire documentaries, multiple episodes on both of these guys. People have done that. That's not the purpose of this video. We just want to talk about who they were in brief and how they built their businesses. So Rockefeller, he was born in upstate New York, settled in the Cleveland, Ohio area, and he began building this company that would become Standard Oil. And he really concentrated on oil refining at a time when kerosene and eventually gasoline were exploding with importance here in the United States. And once Standard Oil became efficient, once it became profitable, he used something called horizontal integration or horizontal consolidation to take over the oil industry. At his height, Rockefeller's Standard Oil controlled around 90% of the US oil supply. So, what is horizontal integration? This is how I usually explain it to my students. Basically, if you think of, you're looking at Main Street in any town in America, or downtown in any town in America, and you imagine the businesses side by side, they're on that horizontal plane, the street, and you're looking at them face on. Horizontal integration is when you take over those stores next to you. Or in the case of John Rockefeller, you're taking over your competition, you're taking over industry competitors. That's what horizontal integration is. So again, if you imagine that horizontal plane and pretend you got, like three oil rigs next to each other. You got Standard Oil there in the middle. You've got a local oil company on one side and maybe another local oil company on the other side. Rockefeller is going to take them over. And one way that he would do this is his famous price wars. So once Rockefeller became successful, he had enough money to go into a market and undercut the prices of his competition, basically until they went out of business or they agreed to sell out to him. He would do this knowing that he would be taking a loss, right? He's losing money as he sells his oil for cheaper than market value, but doing so drives all the dollars, all the customers to him. And he does that until the competition cannot keep up. They go out of business, or they sell out to him, or he gets stock in their companies. And then once he's the only game in town, what do you think John Rockefeller did? Of course, he raised those prices, and the consumers, now with really only one choice, had no option but to continue paying for the oil at Rockefeller's prices. That's why monopolies are bad. This is why you want competition in industry, because if you only have one supplier, if you have a monopoly, they can charge whatever they want. And that is what Rockefeller and Standard Oil did. So pricing wars helped him with horizontal integration in expanding his business. As I said, he's lowering his prices and driving out the competition until they're gone, and then he's jacking up his prices. Rockefeller was also able to become successful by getting special rates from the railroad industry to ship his oil. That aspect of his business we're not really going to get into today. But all in all, he formed a trust. The trust is basically the monopoly. And so basically, as he takes over other companies in his field, these companies are going to be managed by the very same board of directors, that being Rockefeller's Standard Oil board of directors, and thus he has the monopoly. So, as I said, sometimes he didn't put his competition out of business. Other times he would be acquiring stock in those companies. Basically, as the companies are losing money and they're going under his competition, some of their shareholders would agree to trade their stock in another oil company for stock in Standard Oil, which was much more profitable, and that'd be a good decision for them financially, but it would also allow Rockefeller's company to then control those businesses as they continued to acquire stock in the competition and then make those competitors report again to his same board of directors. And now John Rockefeller is controlling the industry, 90% of the oil industry at his height. How did it all come to an end? Well, essentially, under President Theodore Roosevelt, his government filed an antitrust lawsuit against Standard Oil. That was eventually heard and finalized after Roosevelt left office. But in 1911, the federal government said Standard Oil had broken monopoly laws and that the company needed to be split up. And as you see this chart here on the screen right now, Standard Oil over the years became all of these different oil companies. The irony of this is that in splitting up Standard Oil, Rockefeller actually became even more rich moving forward. And that's why he has the claim to arguably being the richest American of all time. But there's another guy who has claim to that, and that's Andrew Carnegie. So Andrew Carnegie was born in Scotland. He moved overseas here with his parents to the United States. And at his height, Andrew Carnegie had somewhere around $370 billion in terms of modern money here in 2023, making him in the ballpark of the richest American of all time, just like John Rockefeller at his height. His wealth equaled 3% of the entire United States economy, which is just incredible to think about. So Carnegie, both of these guys, I should say, were charitable guys, but Carnegie in particular, if you've ever heard of Carnegie Hall, if you've ever heard of Carnegie Libraries, that's because Andrew Carnegie gave away most of his wealth by the end of his life. Some of that is just because he was a charitable guy. In fact, he didn't even want his name on some of these libraries, these thousands of libraries that he built around the country, maybe even in your hometown. Look it up on Google and see. But he also, no doubt, wanted to be charitable because at the end of his run, there was some bad things happening at his steel plants, notably the strike at Homestead, which is a topic for another video. But if you are interested, look up the Homestead strike and everything that happened there. The workers very much not happy with Carnegie or his right-hand man, Henry Frick. So how did Carnegie get to the point where he amassed this kind of wealth? Well, he used horizontal integration. He took over his competition too, just like John Rockefeller, but he also used something called vertical integration or vertical consolidation, which also John Rockefeller used. But I'm going to illustrate this one with Andrew Carnegie. So basically the timeline of Andrew Carnegie is he started Edgar Thomson Steel Works in 1872. Brilliantly, that steel company was named after one of his customers. Eventually, that company became Carnegie Steel in 1892. And then in 1901, Andrew Carnegie sold his steel company to J.P. Morgan to form a large conglomerate called U.S. Steel, which continues to exist to this very day. So what is vertical integration? Well, the way I explain this to my students is you imagine this time a skyscraper where every single floor in that skyscraper is responsible for a different step in the supply chain, a different step of production. Oftentimes, I will illustrate with this with a very simple and easy to understand product like a baseball bat. All right, what do you need to make a baseball bat? You need wood, of course. You might need paint and stain. You might need lumber, so you might need a forest in order to get that out to the customers. You might need rail lines. You might need the shipping industry. Heck, you might need tape for the bats as well. So in vertical consolidation or vertical integration, you would control all of those costs in-house. You would own the forest where you're cutting down the lumber for the bats. You would own the paint company. You would own the shipping industry, and so on. So you are covering all those costs in-house. You are personally responsible for those, but you're responsible for where that money is going. And so in the case of Andrew Carnegie, you see over here the skyscraper metaphor where he's controlling the coke fields, he's controlling the iron ore deposits, he's controlling the steel mill, of course, the shipping, and the railroads. So this is something that Andrew Carnegie was able to do. Vertical consolidation, you own the steps of production, versus horizontal integration where you own your competition. Those are the differences and two different styles in what could form a monopoly in your industry. Now, as I said, Andrew Carnegie, a very generous guy, but also a ruthless businessman, as we saw over the years, especially during the Homestead Strike in 1893. Hope you learned something from this quick video on what those two different consolidation styles are, a little bit of the basics on Andrew Carnegie and John Rockefeller, two guys who are very interesting and worthy of your time and research. Should you have an interest in them, I will link some sources here in the video description. If you like this video, I would very much appreciate it if you would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you all again real soon.